Hello everyone, this video is all about complete overview of operation research. In this video, I am going to explain all the basic concepts, basic terms that you have studied, you have heard during the practice time of operation research so that all your concepts can be cleared. So let's start with the first concept, explain principle of dominance. This concept you have studied or heard in theory of game chapter. Remember? The main objective of this chapter to find out the saddle point, and there are mainly two methods of saddle point. One is maximin minimax principle, second one is principle of dominance. So this concept is very useful when the saddle point does not exist. So there are mainly three rules of principle of dominance. First rule is row basis, second rule is column basis, third rule is average basis. Now what is row basis rule? If all the elements in a row are less than or equal to the corresponding elements of another row, then that row will be removed from the matrix. Second rule is column basis. If all the elements in a column are more than, or you can say greater than or equal to the corresponding elements of another column, then that column will be removed from the matrix. And third rule is average basis. This rule is applied when your both previous rule have failed. Means this rule is only used in emergency situation. Now what is average basis rule? As per name suggests, in this rule you have to take average of two rows or two columns, then compare with another row values and column values, then apply the same row basis principle and column basis principle. So it is all about your first concept, principle of dominance. Now second concept, define strategies. Now what is strategies? This term also you have heard theory of game chapter. Strategy simply means it is the alternate course of action available to a player, to your competitor in advance. So there are mainly two types of strategies. One is pure, second one is mix. Now how can you identify it is a case of pure strategy case or it is a case of mix? On the basis of saddle point you can identify cases pure or mix. So under theory of game, first step, find the saddle point. If saddle point exists, if saddle point is there, if saddle point lies in a statement, that the case of pure. If saddle point does not exist, that the case of mix. So pure case means when proper transparency is there between all the competitors, all the players. It means if players select the same alternate, same strategies every time, so that the case of pure. In mixed case, when there is a scope of guessing, means you say I am 100% sure, I am 10% sure, I am 20% sure, my competitor will use this thing. So that's a case of mixed where the scope of guessing is there. Clear? Now the third question is saddle point. This term you have also heard in theory of game chapter. What is saddle point? First of all, saddle point is also known as optimum point, equilibrium point. Now what is saddle point? Saddle point simply means where the gain of one player is equal to loss of another player. So that point is known as saddle point in simple language. Where the gain of one player is equal to loss of another player, means when your all three values are same. All three values means your maximin value, minimax value and your common value, corresponding value against maximin and minimax. When all these three values are same, case is saddle point. Now the fourth concept, decision tree. Now what is decision tree? This term you have heard in decision theory chapter. Decision tree simply means it is a graphical representation of state of nature, courses of action, associated probabilities attached to state of nature, and all the conditional benefits, losses. When all these things you have to show in graph form, that's called decision tree. So under decision tree, you have to take care of two things. One is chance node, second one is decision node. Means decision tree consists of nodes and branches. And there are mainly two types of nodes. One is chance node, second one is decision node. First of all, decision node denoted by a square. Now what is decision node? Decision node simply means initial point of your all alternates, starting point of your all alternates. Whenever you have to take decision between your alternates, then you have to show by square, means denoted by square. Now what is chance node? Chance node simply means outcome or result of your each and every alternate. That's called your chance node. Whatever result outcome you obtain from your alternates, that's called chance node. And it is always denoted by a circle. So it is all about decision tree. Now next concept is key column. This term you have heard in linear programming chapter. Remember, there are mainly two methods of linear programming. One is graphic method, second one is simplex method. Under simplex method, you have to identify which column is your key column, which row is your key row. Now, what is key column? First of all, key column also known as your pivot column, not private column, pivot. Pivot, pivot column. So it can be studied under two head in case of maximization case, in case of minimization case. Under simplex method, you have to identify Cj minus Zj. Remember last step of your table. You have to calculate the value of Cj minus Zj. So in maximization case, the column with the largest positive value in Cj minus Zj, that column is known as your key column or pivot column. In maximization case, means highest positive value lies in which column, that column is known as your pivot column, key column. Minimization case just opposite from maximization case. Under maximization case, you have to identify most positive value in column. Under minimization case, you have to identify most negative value. So means the column with the smallest or most negative value in Cj minus Zj, that column is known as your key column. Clear? Now next concept is key row. Key row also known as pivot row. Key row also known as your pivot row. This concept you have also heard in simplex method. Now what is key row? If you remember, in simplex method, the last part of table, you have to calculate the value of minimum ratio. Then in minimum ratio, you have to identify the minimum value. So in which row that your minimum value lies, that row is known as key row, pivot row. Clear? So in minimum ratio, last part of your table under simplex method, in minimum ratio, you have to identify the least value. So that least value lies in which row, that row is known as your pivot row. Now next concept is artificial variable. This concept you have also heard in linear programming. Artificial variable denoted by A1, A2, A3. Now what is artificial variable? As you know, you have observed in linear programming, formulation of linear programming means first step of linear programming, you have to make equations. Equation may be in form of less than, equal or greater than. So in case of equal than constraints, so it is observed sometimes the need of surplus variable and slack variable. Sometimes you have observed the introduction of slack variable or surplus variable is not able to provide the initial feasible solution. So to solve this problem, artificial variables are introduced, and the artificial variable are fictitious, means can't have any physical meaning. If you remember, whenever you have to make your objective function denoted by z, the value of artificial variable denoted by m, plus m or minus m. So that's why it's called the value of artificial variable are fictitious, can't have any physical meaning. So denoted by m. So in case of maximization case, denoted by minus m. In case of minimization case, denoted by plus m. Clear? It's all about artificial variable. Always use it greater than constraints or equal constraints, or denoted by m in case of maximization case, denoted by minus m in case of minimization case, denoted by plus m. Now next concept is slack variable. This concept is you have also heard in linear programming. Now what is slack variable? Slack variable you have to use in less than equal to constraint, means in maximization case. Remember, in maximization case, all constraints should be less than equal. So whenever the case is less than equal, you have to add some variable. it's the second step of linear programming under simplex method. Convert all the inequalities into equalities. So whenever your constraint is less than equal, you have to convert all the inequalities into equalities. Then you have to add s1, s2, s3 in each constraint value. So that is a slack variable. Now just opposite from slack variable, that is surplus variable. Slack variable always used in maximization case, surplus variable always used in minimization case. Plus slack variable always used in less than equal constraint, surplus variable always using greater than equal constraint. Slack variable always adding constraint plus s1 plus s2, surplus variable always deduct from constraint minus s1 minus s2 minus s3. So these are the basic difference between slack and surplus variables. Clear? Now next concept is earliest starting time, earliest latest time. These terms you have heard in PERT and CPM chapter. Program evaluation review technique, CPM critical path method. Now what is earliest starting time, earliest finishing time? Earliest starting time, as per name suggests, it is the earliest time a task can feasible start. Means as soon as possible you can start your project. That's called earliest starting time. Earliest finishing time, it is the earliest time a task can be feasibly end. Means as soon as possible you can end your task, you can finish your task. That's called earliest finishing time. Now just opposite from earliest starting time, earliest finishing time, that is the latest starting time, latest finishing time. Now what's the difference between earliest starting time or latest starting time? Earliest starting time is as soon as possible you can start your project, but latest start time, as soon as possible you must start your project. Means there's a difference between can and must between latest starting time and earliest starting time. Now latest finishing time, as soon as possible you can finish your project. Now what's the meaning of latest finishing time? As soon as possible you must finish your project. So here the same difference, can and must. Clear? Now the next concept, critical path. Now what is critical path? Critical path simply means shortest route with maximum time. Means the minimum length of the schedule in the length of the longest part. The longest part is called critical path. Means under critical path you have to identify the key activities where you have to pay attention. You can't ignore that activities. Means shortest route with maximum time, that's called critical path. So one thing keep in mind, in critical path your earliest starting time, latest time, all times are same. So that path is known as your critical path, shortest route with maximum time, and on that part your earliest time, latest time, all times are same. Clear? Now next concept is floats. This word you have also heard in PERT CPM. Now what is floats? Floats always calculated for activities. So there are mainly three types of float. One is total float, free float, independent float. Now what do you mean by float? Float simply means it represents the margin by which activity starts time can be delayed without affecting overall duration time. Means it show the margin time. So there are mainly three types of float. One is total float, free float, and independent float. Now what is total float? Total float simply means difference between latest starting time or earliest starting time, or you can say latest finishing time or earliest finishing time. You have to apply any of this formula, latest starting minus earliest starting, latest finishing minus earliest finishing, answer will be same. So total float simply means difference between ls minus es, latest starting minus earliest starting, or latest finishing or earliest finishing. You can apply any one of these out of these two formula and answer will be same. Now what's the meaning of total float? Total float simply means it represents the amount of time of an activity that can be delayed without delay the overall project. So that's called total float. Now what is free float? Free float totally depend upon the value of total float. Free float means it is a difference between total float and head slack. So difference between total float and head slack. Free float is also known as normal float. Keep in mind this thing. Now, what is independent float? Independent float simply means difference between free float minus tail slack, or you can say show the time available if an activity has a late start and earliest finish. So that time is known as independent float. So in short, remember only remember the definition by its formula. It is a difference between free float and tail slack. That's the easy one. Now, what is economic order quantity? I explained this concept in my previous video. Watch that video in detail. I will explain all the basic terms that we use under economic order quantity. So watch that video. Economic order quantity, also known as optimum quantity, reorder quantity. So what is EOQ? EOQ simply means where your total cost is minimum. Means when your ordering cost is equal to your carrying cost. So that point is known as EOQ method. So in detail, watch the video of EOQ. Now next concept is degeneracy. This word you have heard in transportation chapter and simplex method. Meaning of degeneracy can be studied under two heads. In case of transportation problem, in case of a linear programming problem, means simplex method. In case of transportation problem, what is degeneracy? When m plus n minus 1 not equal to occupied cells, that's called degeneracy. Here m stands for total number of rows including dummy if any. N stands for total number of columns including dummy if any. One more thing, degeneracy in transportation problem also called as ring condition. If ring condition is not satisfied, the solution is not degenerate. That's also a case of degeneracy. Plus, now the question arises how to remove degeneracy. There are mainly two stages in degeneracy occurs. First at the time of initial solution, second at the time of optimum solution, means at the time of testing of optimum solution. So degeneracy at the time of initial solution, there are mainly two conditions. Where these two conditions are satisfied, on that point you have to assign m or infinitive. To remove degeneracy, you have to denote m or infinitive on any cell value. Now the question is how can you choose any cell value? So there are mainly two conditions. First condition, that value should be least value, and from that least value close path can't be constructed. Where these two conditions are satisfied, on that value you have to assign m or infinitive. Now what's the meaning of degeneracy in case of LP simplex method? When there's a tie-up in a minimum ratio. Minimum ratio means last part of your table, simplex table. When there's a tie-up in a minimum ratio, that's the case of degeneracy. Means when two or more rows give same least positive value, least ratio, when there's a tie-up in a minimum ratio, that's called degeneracy. Now the procedure for resolving degeneracy in simplex method. First step, select the rows in which the smallest non-negative ratios are tied. Then second step, write down the coefficient of slack variables in tied rows. Then divide each coefficient by the corresponding element of key column in the same row, starting from left to right in order to break the tie. If the ratios do not break the tie, find similar ratio for the coefficient of decision variables. At the end, select the row with smallest ratio. That row becomes the key row. So in this procedure, you can remove your degeneracy. Clear? Next concept, difference between PERT and CPM. Now PERT stands for Program Evaluation Review Technique. CPM stands for Critical Path Method. Now what's the difference between PERT and CPM? Before discussing the difference between PERT and CPM, firstly I'll explain what's the similarity between PERT and CPM. First of all, both are controlling techniques to control standard time and cost. Now what's the difference between PERT and CPM? The meaning of PERT. PERT is a project management technique used to manage uncertain activities of a project. And CPM is a statistical technique of project management that manage the well-defined activities of a project. So PERT always using newly project. CPM always using repetitive project. PERT is event oriented. CPM is activity oriented. PERT always focus on time and CPM always focus on time and cost trade-off. PERT is your probabilistic model. CPM is your deterministic model. Under PERT, you have to take 3 times estimate: most positive time, most negative time, most likely time. Under CPM, you have to estimate only 1 time, that is your duration time. Clear? PERT always using newly project, means using research development project. CPM always uses repetitive project like construction of dams, bridge. And PERT is a technique of planning and control of time. CPM is a technique to control cost and time. And PERT is probabilistic model. Why it's called probabilistic model? Reason being, under PERT, whatever assumption you assume related to time and cost, that totally based on uncertainty. Reason being, it is always using newly project. CPM is a deterministic model. Why it's called deterministic model? Reason being, under CPM, whatever assumption you assume related to time and cost, that totally based on certainty. Reason being, it is always using repetitive projects. So these are the basic difference point by which you can differentiate PERT and CPM. Clear? Now next concept is unbalanced problem. Now what is unbalanced problem? This problem can also be studied under 2 heads: in case of assignment problem, in case of transportation problem. Now in case of transportation problem, what's the meaning of unbalanced problem? Under transportation, first step, identify cases balanced or unbalanced. Now the question arises in your mind, how can you identify cases balanced or unbalanced? Balanced case simply means when total of supply is equal to total of demand, case is balanced. So first step, you have to compare your supply total and demand total. If total supply total and demand total, both total are same, then case is balance problem. If case is balanced, then no need to do anything in first step. But if case is unbalanced means if total of supply is not equal to total of demand, case is unbalanced. So firstly, you have to make unbalanced to balance by insert a dummy row or dummy column. Now when to insert dummy row or dummy column? If case is unbalanced case, if total of supply is not equal to total of demand, case is balanced. It has 2 possibilities arise: either supplies are more than demand or demand more than supply. If your supply total is more than demand total, then you have to insert dummy column. And if your demand is more than supply, then you have to insert dummy row. So by this parameter, compare demand and supply, you have to take your decision whether you have to insert dummy row or dummy column. If S is greater than D, then you have to insert dummy column. If D is greater than S, on that point you have to insert dummy row. Clear? So this is the first step under transportation: identify cases balanced or unbalanced. Unbalanced simply means when total of supply is not equal to total of demand. Balanced when total of supply is equal to total of demand. Now in case of assignment, what is balance problem? It is a second step under assignment problem. First step under assignment problem, identify cases maximization case or minimization case. Now the question arises, how can you identify cases maximization or minimization? Maximization case you can identify by giving profit, revenue, production, productivity, all these things are given in a statement. So you can easily identify cases maximization case. Minimization case you can identify when time is given, when cost is given, when nothing is given related to data given, simply just mention solve the following assignment problem, then treated as a minimization case. So first step under assignment, identify cases maximization or minimization. So these are the parameters by which you can identify cases maximization or minimization. If case is minimization, then no need to do anything in first step. Remember, reason being the main objective of OR is cost minimization. But if case is maximization, so firstly convert maximization into minimization. Now the question arises in your mind, how can we convert maximization to minimization? So the procedure is identify the highest element in whole matrix, then less all elements from the highest element and itself also. So by this way you can convert your maximization case into minimization case. Now our main question is unbalanced problem in assignment. So second step under assignment problem, identify cases balanced problem or unbalanced. Now the question again in your mind, how can you identify cases balanced or unbalanced? Under transportation you have to compare supply total with demand total, but under assignment case, in assignment case you have to compare total number of rows and total number of columns. If number of rows are equal to number of columns, case is balanced problem. If case is balanced, then no need to do anything in second step. But if number of rows are not equal to number of columns, case is unbalanced problem. So the in assignment problem, the meaning of unbalanced is total number of rows are not equal to total number of columns, case is unbalanced. So it has two possibilities, either rows are more than columns or columns are more than row. In case if number of rows are more than number of columns, then you have to insert dummy column. If columns are more than rows, then you have to insert dummy row. So by this way you can make your unbalanced problem into balanced problem. Clear? Now next concept, unbounded solution in simplex method. Now what is unbounded solution in simplex method? In my previous concept, in key row, pivot row, I had explained this point. Unbounded solution when your all minimum ratio became nil, means when your minimum ratio comes equal to 0, infinitive, negative, so that case is known as unbounded solution. So that's the meaning of unbounded solution, when all your minimum ratio come equal to 0, negative, infinitive, that's the case of unbounded solution. Reason being, in this case you can't identify your key row. So when you are unable to identify your key row, means pivot row, that case is known as your unbounded solution. So in this case you have to mention, since our all minimum ratio became nil, so it is a case of unbounded solution. Now next concept, explain the motives for holding inventories. Now this concept I had already explained under inventory management video. Go and watch that video. On that video I will explain inventory management in detail, but in brief I will tell you there are mainly three motives behind holding inventories in an enterprise. One is transaction motive, second one is precautionary motive, third one is speculative motive. Now what is transaction motive? According to this motive, an enterprise maintains inventory to avoid bottlenecks in its production and sale. It means whenever you want your production goes smoothly, then you have to maintain some inventory on a routine basis. Means you want your sales are not affected due to any reason of finished good, any reason of shortage of raw material, then you have to maintain record for day-to-day transaction related to buying and selling. So transaction motive is all about related to buying and selling for day-to-day operation. Your sale will not affect by the shortage of raw material, so that's called you have to maintain inventory for transaction motive. Second one is precautionary motive. Precautionary motive means as per this motive, under this case inventories are also held with a motive to have a cushion against unpredicted business. Means unpredicted business means all of sudden you can say, means the supply of raw material may get delayed due to factors like strike, transportation problem, shortage of supply, lengthy process involving import of raw material. So in this case the company should maintain sufficient level of inventory to take care of such situation. So this is your precautionary motive, means always ready for the adverse situation. Then you have to maintain inventory. Last one is speculative motive. Speculative motive simply means when the company, when any organization want to take the advantage of price fluctuation. Suppose if the prices of raw material are to increase rather steeply, the enterprise would like to hold more inventories than required at lower prices. It's quite obvious, when price is low, demand will increase. So that's called speculative motive. When you want, when the any company, when any organization want to take advantage of price fluctuation, so on that case you have to maintain inventory. That's motive is known as speculative motive. Now next part is explain the types of inventories. There are mainly three types of inventories. One is raw material, work in progress, and finished goods. In my previous video on inventory management, I had explained all these three concepts in detail. Kindly watch uh, the video of inventory management EOQ and last year question paper, university question paper. In all these three videos, I explain this concept, explain the types of inventory. First is raw material. Raw material simply means these are those goods which have been purchased and stored for further production. Means these are the goods which have not been committed to production at all. Working progress means semi-finished goods which are not ready for sale. That's called semi-manufactured product or semi-finished goods. And finished goods means when the goods has been crossed the production line of production which are ready for sale. So that's called finished goods. Now next concept is explain the methods of finding initial solution in transportation problem. There are mainly three methods for finding the initial solution of transportation problem. One is northwest corner method, NWCM, least cost method, LCM, and vocal approximation method. This is the third step of transportation problem. First step, identify cases balance problem, unbalance. Second step, identify cases maximization case or minimization. Third step, finding the value of initial solution. So there are mainly three methods: northwest corner method, least cost method, and vocal approximation method. If nothing is mentioned related to method, then always use VAM method. Now, what's the step of NWCM, least cost method, and vocal approximation method? If you have done your practical part, you can easily attempt this question. You have to explain all theory subject or practical subjects that you have used in your practical portion. You have to explain in this question. Like in under northwest corner method, first step, start from left side upper cell. Remember, select the upper left hand corner cell of the transportation problem and allocate as many units as possible equal to the minimum between available supply and demand. Then adjust the supply demand in the respective rows and column. If the demand for the first cell is satisfied, then move horizontally. Means under this method you have to move zigzag. So if you have done your practical part, you can easily attempt this question. You have easily explained the steps of NWCM, least cost method, and vocal approximation method. So NWCM, start from left side upper cell, then move zigzag. Under least cost method, start from least value, then second least value, then third least value, and so on. Under vocal approximation method, start from the row penalty and column penalty. Now the question arises, how can find the value of row penalty and column penalty? Row penalty simply means identify the least element in first row, then after identify the least element in first row, identify the second least element in same row, then take a difference between second least and first least, then same procedure followed in subsequent rows and columns. Clear? Now next question, what are the different costs involved in inventory management system? Already explained this question under inventory management theory, EOQ, and last year university question paper. Most important questions. There are mainly four types of cost: capital cost, ordering cost, stock out cost, storage cost. So capital cost simply means maintaining of inventory result in blocking of firm financial resources. Means simply means means you have to incur minimum investment in inventory for day to day operation. You have to invest uh, some particular amount in inventories. So in this case, there's always lies a opportunity cost of investment. So that cost is known as capital cost. Suppose if you, because if you don't invest in particular amount in inventory, you can invest in some particular another asset, you will earn some interest if you deposit that amount in FD. So that's involve opportunity cost, that's call your capital cost. Ordering cost, as you know, uh, ordering of an order, this concept I had explained under EOQ principle. Important cost involved in EOQ. And stock out cost simply means that situation when firm is not having goods of any particular item in store, but there is a demand for that particular good, means when firm is unable to fulfill its demand, so that cost is known as stock out cost. And storage cost means cost of handling inventory, also known as carrying cost. Now, difference between linear programming and goal programming. Now, what's the difference between linear programming and goal programming? As you know, linear programming only focus on single linear objective function, either profit maximization or cost minimization. But goal programming is much more general. It is allowed to have multiple objective function which might be conflicting. So goal programming deals with multiple objective, linear programming deal with only one single objective. So goal programming can solve problem about cost minimization or profit maximization, but goal programming is a powerful tool to tackle multiple and conflicting goals of any enterprises. Now, nature of operation research, characteristics of operation research. There are mainly five characteristics of operation research. One is decision making approach. So under decision making approach simply means here you have to apply whole decision making process. Firstly, identify the alternates, then identify the problem, search alternates, then evaluate, then choose best one, then implement and follow up. So that's why it's called decision making approach. Second approach is scientific approach. Reason being under OR. First step, any problem is formulated into mathematical model. So OR technique is a scientific approach because it is a formalized process of reasoning and consists of various mathematical tools and technique. With the help of these mathematical tools and technique, firstly, real problems are converted into mathematical model after optimal solutions are derived. Third approach is objective oriented approach, means it works according to the objective of the organization. Means firstly you have to set your objective. One thing, if you remember, I always used to say OR is all about problem solving and decision making. So under OR, first step you have to identify your objective. Suppose my objective is sale maximization. Now the question is how to maximize my sale. So this problem converted into mathematical model. So firstly you have to determine your objective. Reason being it works according to objective of the organization. That's why it's called objective oriented approach. Without determining objective, you can't use OR. Fourth approach is holistic approach. Holistic approach means whole approach. Means while arriving at a decision, and OR team examining the relative importance of all conflicting and multiple objectives. Also the validity of claims of various departments of the organization from the perspective of the whole organization. It means in simple language, if your problem is sale maximization as per objective oriented approach, your objective is sale maximization. Now how to maximize sale? So as per holistic approach, and OR teams not only examining only sales department, he will examine purchase department, finance department as well, research and development department. Reason being OR teams believe all departments are connected, interconnected, or are dependent on each other. So if problem is related to sale maximization, so it doesn't mean OR team only examine to sales department. He will also examine the purchase, finance, research and development, all departments of the organization, because he believe in whole team. he believe in holistic approach. Last approach is interdisciplinary team approach. It is an important characteristics of OR approach. Reason being, according to this characteristic, no single individual can be expert on all aspects of the problem. Reason being, because one person may not have the complete knowledge of all aspects, such as economic, social, political, engineering, sociology, psychology. So under OR team, you invited various experts from the different fields. Then optimal solutions are derived. So that's why it's called interdisciplinary approach. Now, operating characteristics of queuing theory. This question is, I already explained in queuing theory video, in which I explained the meaning of queuing theory, operating characteristics of queuing theory, and models of queuing theory. So there are mainly 5 characteristics of queuing theory. One is queue length. Queue length simply means the average number of customers in the queue, in the queue waiting to get service. Means how many customers are waiting to get their services. That's called queue length. Or there always a negative relationship between queue length and number of customers, customer satisfaction level. If queue length increases, customer dissatisfaction level also increases. And second one is system length. System length simply means the average number of customers in the system, those waiting to be or those being serviced. Means under system length, you have to consider some total of customers, those who are still waiting in the queue or those who already availed their services. So that's called system length. Waiting time in a queue means the average time that a customer has to spend, has to wait in a queue to get service. So that's called waiting time in a queue. That also related to customer dissatisfaction or also potential loss of future revenue if customer has to wait for long term period. Next is total time in the system. Total time in the system, the average time that a customer spends in a system from entry to exit. So that is known as total time in the system. And service idle time simply means the relative frequency with which the service system is idle. Means suppose when your turn come, on that time service provider busy with his personal call, so on that time service system is idle, so that time is known as service idle time, or it is directly related to company's cost. So there are mainly 2 models of queuing system, probabilistic and deterministic. Under deterministic model, in this case where the customers arrive in the queuing system at regular interval and service time for each customer is known and constant. But under probabilistic model, customer arrival time is not fixed, customer service time is also not fixed. Now the last concept is types of decision making environment. I made 3 videos of decision theory, decision tree, decision theory under uncertainty, risk. So there are mainly 3 types of decision making environment. For detailing, if you want to know the concept in detail, kindly watch those videos. There are mainly 3 types of decision making environment. One is decision making under certainty, decision making under risk, decision making under uncertainty. So first is decision making under certainty. In this type of environment, decision maker has complete and accurate knowledge of each and every alternate. Reason being, you operate in the world of certainty. Everything is well defined, everything is well known. So in this type of environment, decision maker has complete and accurate knowledge of each and every alternate, plus there is only one outcome of each alternate. For example, the decision to purchase, either invest in NSS National Savings Certificate, Indira Vikas Patra, or deposit in National Savings Scheme. So in all these cases, interest rate is well known, interest rate is secure. So this is an example of decision making under risk. Like FD, if you invest in FD, definitely you will get interest, and interest rate is also defined. So that's the meaning of decision making under certainty, where the decision maker has complete and accurate knowledge of each and every alternate, and there's only one outcome of each alternate. Suppose if you invest in FD, if you are you invest in national savings certificate, at the end of year, at the end of majority period, you will get only interest. Clear? Second is decision making under risk. In this type of environment, decision maker has incomplete, inaccurate knowledge of each and every alternate, plus there is a multiple possible outcome of each alternate. So that's the difference between under certainty. Under certainty, decision maker has complete and accurate knowledge of each and every alternate, but under risk, decision maker has incomplete, inaccurate knowledge of each and every alternate. Plus, second difference, under certainty, decision maker has there's only one outcome of each alternate, but under risk there's a multiple possible outcome of each alternate. Like investment in stock market, if someone say I want to invest in stock market, so in stock market, uh, if you want to invest in share under stock market, what type of share you prefer? Like means you want to invest in equity share or preference share. If you say I want to invest in equity share, so equity share further classified under various cumulative equity share, non-cumulative equity share. So under this, return rate is also not sure, plus incomplete, inaccurate knowledge, and multiple possible outcome of each alternate. So that's the meaning of decision making under risk. Next one is decision making under uncertainty. Decision making under uncertainty simply means under this type of environment, decision maker has incomplete, inaccurate knowledge of each and every alternate, plus there is a multiple possible outcome of each alternate. Now the question arises in your mind, then what's the difference between under risk or under uncertainty? Because meaning are same. Under risk, decision maker has incomplete, inaccurate knowledge. Under uncertainty is also incomplete, inaccurate knowledge. Under risk, there is a multiple possible outcome of each alternate. Under uncertainty, also a multiple possible outcome of each alternate. But under uncertainty, suppose you are belong to new to that particular industry. Suppose first time you are going to invest in share market, your base is zero, your past experience is zero. You can't say I am 10% sure this security will return 10% in near future, 20% in near future. Reason being, your past experience is zero, you are new to that industry, you are not familiar to that industry. Then how can you say I am 10% sure? But under risk, you belong to that industry, plus you can say I am 20% sure because my experience is 10 year, my experience is 20 year, 30 year, 5 year. So on the basis of my experience, I can say it will return 10% after this particular time period. But under uncertainty, you belong to, you are not belong to that particular area, not belong to that particular industry. So the only difference between under risk and uncertainty, difference is the probability. Under risk, you can assign probabilities, you can say I am 10% sure, 20% sure. But under uncertainty, you can't assign probabilities, you can't say I am 10% sure. I mean, because you are not familiar to that industry, your base is zero, your past experience zero. So you don't have any parameters on which you can say I am 10% sure, 20% sure. So only difference between under risk and uncertainty is that is called probability. So under risk, you can assign probabilities, under uncertainty you can't assign probabilities. So these are the basic terms you have studied, you have heard during your practice time of OR. I explain each and every term in detail, so you can easily face your Viva part. Still, if you face any problem, kindly let me know. You can put your query in the comment box. Thank you so much.